What is death? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is death? The standard definition of death is the termination of life, the ceasing of bodily functions. So, death begins with life. So, in life, we have the capacity to engage in activity in this dimension. And any organism, any system that has animus and some level of exhibited sovereignty over its biological system is said to be alive and engaged in life. And what we call death is the term and the word that applies to when that organism ceases to be engaged in life. Which also leads us to an understanding. Death does not come all at once. The term death denotes when the life has been terminated, but by understanding that life is the ability to engage in this dimension, then we can also see that death does come gradually as the cessation of the abilities to engage in this world occur. So the death can be more gradual than we know, and is therefore linked to what we would think of as the aging process, which, if we really drill down into it, aging, although accurate, is a bit euphemistic because it may be more accurately described as the decaying process or the dying process, especially once it goes over a certain biologically irreversible or irreparable level of decay. Now, for many organisms, the termination of their life occurs before any significant decay or aging occurs. And so they could be in the prime of their life, whatever type of organism they are, when their life is terminated. And so obviously it wouldn't apply to them. But I'd say the majority of organisms, they reach a peak level of their ability to interact with the material realm. And then they do begin a process of death and decay, which is far more on display in the animal kingdom, which we did arise from, where the brutality of the survivalism aspect of it weeds out or makes those organisms which are subject to advanced decay or aging vulnerable and have their life functions terminated at a much higher percentage than, let's say, humans who have created infrastructures to protect the decaying and aging and dying from natural forces that would otherwise have their life functions terminated at much earlier ages. So there's protection in that realm, in that regard, which also gives rise to our ability to ponder it. For there is a security that has been built into the human world and into the consciousness of Homo sapiens, where when we found a way to insulate ourselves from many of these natural forces, we have had a significant population and a security in the younger population that we can actually live a lengthy life throughout our conditions of aging and decay and essentially dying, lightly dying. And for us to be able to live through that consciously and aware has given rise to many philosophers throughout the ages who have been able to ponder the nature of death in that regard, of the decay, of the aging, and of the ability to sort of more seamlessly analyze what it means. And death is always in contrast to life. They're inescapable, because really death, when you say death, you're saying, what you're really saying is a statement in regards to where the organism is in relation to it being in the prime of life and engaged in full life activities in this particular realm. So when we get into the questions of death itself and the termination of the life functions, you know, it's like there are repercussions that occur while we're alive. So one of them is the fact that we're having this discussion, and that philosophers have discussed the nature of the death, the impending death, which is something that weighs on the human consciousness. And apparently, unlike it weighs on any other species that we've encountered. In some ways, it's a huge gift because it catalyzes a focusing of the intentions of us while we're in life. So the knowledge of the inevitability of our own death gives us focus and context for the life which we are currently living. And that can be taken into many ways. Now, death as a concept, it's a high leveraging concept. And when you look throughout human history, many humans do what I said, and it gives them, they take it for contextual information, and it helps them focus and have appreciation and all these other things. And other humans do lots of other things with them. Warmongers use it to leverage finite resources and create macro economies. And, you know, religions, it's a part of a religion, but like cults use it to manipulate people, like, because there's a lot of fear associated with death, because for this life it's the ultimate unknown, what lies on the other side. And so those can be used for or against people's consciousness and their emotional state and how they're approaching their life and their behaviors, so essentially their psychology. And so it's a topic that's sensitive to everybody because everybody knows they're going to have to face it. And nobody has any real concrete answers in terms of the randomness of it, and certainly on what lies on the other side. Now, in terms of what lies on the other side, while being philosophical and not theological, we don't have any probes that have gone to the other side. We don't know that. What we do know is that we know laws of physics of the universe say that essentially the universe just recycles everything. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. And the mathematicians, it was like a couple years ago, they were doing, they have a math equation for consciousness, and they basically came to the mathematical conclusion that the consciousness continues past the physical realm. I don't, my math level's not high enough to have read and understood the whole formula, but that was their summation of things, was they determined that the consciousness continues mathematically. If you're a mathematician, you're watching this, feel free to pipe in. And the closest thing we have is, well, we have two things. One, we have the matter of the fact of prior to death is a very, very common experience throughout time for humans to be able to have out-of-body experiences. Now, that is an important admission into this discussion because it demonstrates the fact, and it's evidence that the soul and the body can be separated and that it can be scientifically / empirically documented. In fact, many of, we can just restrict it to the Americans, but the U.S. had a remote viewing project run by the military that many of the remote viewers have come out and spoken, and they were doing it for intelligence gathering for the U.S. government. And they essentially have a routine where they put themselves into a trance and they can leave their body or project their consciousness out of their body into, in their case, areas of interest for intelligence gathering operations, get the information and then relay it through their body in like sketches and notes and stuff. And they're found to have a scientifically significant level of accuracy, to the point that the government relied on them for intelligence. So we have that admitted into evidence as fact that a Homo sapien can project their consciousness, nay soul, out of their body while they are living, and that it can be properly documented by outside observers, and in fact relied upon as essential information gathering, that a human being can leave their own body while living and then return to their body. That is a fact. How that applies here is that we then have a very large collection of people who have what we call near-death experiences. And the near-death experiences have a majority reporting from people that they separate from their body and that they experience a spiritual realm. And the people who report these incidents come from every single aspect of demographic of human being. Young to old, educated, uneducated, poor to rich, any part of the globe. Covers every single aspect of the human experience. And they almost uniformly come back, independent of each other, with the same story, with the same vibe, with the same truthful sincerity, that they've experienced another realm, and that their consciousness assuredly was continuing, and almost every single one of them did not want to come back. Now, I can't say philosophically that that's 100% evidence. But when we know that the other group does astral projection, that does have concrete noted intelligence gathering, that is true and used for government strategy purposes, then we do know that these people are telling the truth about the fact that they left their body and returned. And in many of these cases, they're documented to have been just stone cold dead for lengthy periods of time. Their bodies were in hospitals, ER rooms, they'd flatlined, no brain activity. They were done. The stretches of time vary, but the stories almost never vary. They were dead, they were in a hospital room, they left their body, they meticulously documented things that were occurring in the ER, surgeries that were being done to them, people who were in the room, all sorts of things. Things that there was no possibility of them being able to recount using their 5 common senses, and certainly not while they were legally dead. So that actually would be evidence that the consciousness was continuing, despite the fact that science itself, medical science, said without a doubt that they were dead, biologically dead. Now, in that regard, that's about as far as we can get in terms of reasoning, right? Without going into theology. Those are that's science. We have volumes and volumes of these incidents, well recorded, well documented, all scientifically noted, of these instances. And so from here, we can reason that we have evidence that our consciousness does continue after the death of the physical body. If we want to zoom out and make presumptions, we can look at the fact that the universe, even the finite universe, is essentially, by mathematics, is essentially infinite. And we know that it's a recycling machine. And the math supports the fact that the soul keeps going on. And we know the soul can separate from the body, which is a big deal. And we have plenty of accounts of people who have died who have said that it does keep going. Now, where it goes to, what the next level is, that's up for discussion. In Plato's Republic, he talks about reincarnation. He talks about the in-between realms and going to places, and he basically says, you go someplace, and then based on how you live your life, you get choices of, how to reincarnate. And if I'm recalling it correctly, you're in a room for a little bit and you figure it out, and then you're coming back down here. You take there's like a fountain of forgetfulness, basically, that you drink from before you reincarnate, and gives you a memory wipe, and you come back down and do it again, have another life. All of those things, they're up in the air. It'd just be best guess. What we know for sure is that death is it's the termination of our life functions in this particular iteration of our body. We know that some sort of profound transformation of our point of consciousness, which inhabits this body, occurs. We don't know 100% for a fact what happens, what's on the other side of the veil of that transformation. But we do know that our death, is a catalyst for the transformation and sort of the transportation of the transmutation of the teleportation of our soul from this dimension to some other dimension, just based on some of the leads we have. Now, of course, it's philosophy, so we're just trying to reason it out. But that is evidence we're given. And that's before we get into all the mystics and the prophets and the seers and the shaman and, all the clergy and all the people who have much more firm claims on what they believe is on the other side of the death veil. But we know for sure is that it's a point at which our life functions cease, and that whatever we want to refer to our point of consciousness as catalyzes into another realm. Now, some people think it's lights out from there. That's fine. And some people think the ride continues. I think there's more evidence for the fact that the ride continues. I think it's science, personally. I don't even think it's theology. I think it's just pure science. But we're at a point in the evolution where the discussions still need to be had, still need to be made, and really, it's like they say, it's the old adage, the true philosopher practices dying every day. So whenever that ship comes in, we'll be ready to board it. Well, thanks for spending some time.